in beautiful downtown Williamsport for our February 22nd edition of Webb Weekly Live.
Yeah, we're finally out of February.
How about that? And State Representative Jeff Wheeland's been nice enough to invite us downtown here.
Yeah, it's always nice to get out of the office, and it's always nice when we get to talk to one of our elected representatives, so it should be a good day.
How about it? So what do you got, Steph?
Well, we have a lot going on this week. Our big cover story is the 95th season of John Bower basketball, which I know is something close to you, that both of your kids played little John Bower basketball back in the day. So Lou's got all the history and the story on that.
95 years.
95 years, yes. It's the oldest organized youth religious basketball organization in the country.
And I was very blessed. Both my boys, I got to coach them through, and Bower basketball, we had a lot of fun. So,
and then speaking of basketball, Jamie Spencer's got a great story about basketball shoes. Apparently his son has amassed quite the collection for being a first grader or second grader, and then he also talks to a couple of other people about how their basketball shoes impact their game and their swagger, so to speak. So,
and that's been going on forever.
Yes.
And are they still wearing Air Jordans or not?
Actually, they are. They are still
good.
still wearing the Jordans. So, and then. It's fittingly, since we're here at a state representative's office, Ken Hunter has a story about two pieces of state legislation that are being introduced and how they're going to affect hunting in Pennsylvania. One is regarding hen calls prior to spring gobbler season, and one has about the use of semi-automatic weapons for hunting.
And Ken Hunter does a good job keeping us up on all that stuff, because I could never keep track of all that.
Absolutely.
So.
But yeah, that's it until I get to give your stuff away.
Well, wonderful, and I'm sure Representative Wheeland has a lot to tell us about, so we'll move right on.
Yeah, I've been consulting the baseball trivia book again, because spring training starts this week. So my baseball trivia question for a $25 gift card to Joe's is, what year was the last spitball legally thrown?
Legally thrown is the key word.
Yeah, the key word is legally thrown. Answer below, $25 gift card to Joe's Pizza. Again, if you've won anything from us in the last 30 days or so, give the question to somebody else this week.
And there's been a lot of spitballs thrown over the years. There's been Vaseline balls. They've figured out how to use anything they could use to doctor a baseball.
Yeah, I've read stories about emery boards, nail files.
One actually falling out of a glove and on national TV.
Yes, yeah.
But great question, and I do not know that answer. So, hey, I guess we got to move right along then and go in the office here. And are we going to talk about the budget?
I think we have to talk about the budget.
We have to talk about a budget. So let's move on forward here. I think Representative Wheeland's waiting.
Hey.
Thanks for having us, Representative Wheeland. Good to see you.
Welcome.
You know my
Thank
editor
you.
staff.
Yeah.
We'll take a quick commercial break, and we'll come right back. Where are we going? Into your office?
We are. Come on in.
Excellent. Thanks.
Over the years, this area has seen its share of ups and downs. And for the past 30 years, our employees have been dedicated to making sure your investment in your vehicle goes a long way, from sales to service. And we promise that same level of commitment for the next 30 years. It's your time, Central Pennsylvania. You deserve a fair deal. Fairfield. You're gonna love us.
And we're back, and we're in downtown Williamsport, down on Pine Street, and we're at State Representative Jeff Wheeland's office. Thanks for having us down here today.
You betcha, Jim.
I get to sit behind your desk. Be you for the day?
Yep, you can.
Well, that's pretty good. Do I have any legislation making powers here? Any? Can you give me executive order for the day?
No, I'm not the executive branch.
No, I know that. I know that. I'm just having some fun with you. So thanks for having us down here. And wow, there's so much we could talk about. Mm-hmm. I guess where we should begin, a lot of times people don't quite understand what your responsibilities are as a state representative, who you represent. I mean, we have Mr. Garth Everett down in the eastern end of the county. We have you. Why don't you give us a quick overview of that for everybody out there? And
Okay. Well, a legislative district is based on population. That's how it's determined every 10 years based on our census. And they try and get it as close to 63,000 people that a House seat, in this case the 83rd district, would represent a pool of 63,000 people. So if you can envision a map of Lycoming County, I'm pretty much, and think of a donut, my district is pretty much lays in the center of the population base of the county, the whole of the donut, so to speak, which is 11 municipalities. Whereas Representative Everett surrounds me. So he's like the donut, and I'm the donut hole.
Gotcha.
But about 63,000 people, constituents, my bosses, that I represent in Harrisburg.
And quickly, a history of the office.
It's a great history of this office.
You know, sometimes well, let's be honest. I don't know if there's enough being taught in today's world about how our government works, and people have the understanding that there once was. So maybe that's a good thing for you to go over.
Well, the actual physical office is a great story, because for years, boy, it goes all the way back to Representative Dempsey, Capelli, Mirabito. Those offices were not located downtown. And I felt, as a businessman, I
Should
thought,
have an office downtown.
you need to have that presence downtown, especially with the proximity to the courthouse, which is right across the street.
Yeah.
Right across the street. So after I won the election in 2014, I started to walk around looking for office space in downtown Williamsport, and the folks that own this building own the Brickyard and several properties downtown here, and this place was literally gutted. I mean, there was no heat, no electric, hardly anything. So Charles and Dave were nice enough to allow me to design it how I wanted it set up, and they built it out, and we were agreed on a lease in December, and by March 1st we were in here.
And it's a very
Very
cool
nice.
office. There's a lot of, you can't really see, but a lot of exposed brick and stuff. It's a very cool office. We really need to talk about getting me better office space.
Maybe we can move you over here.
So, and then along with that, I've just, the people of the 83rd, and of course myself, are very blessed with the staff that we have here. They do great constituent outreach and service. Sometimes when you're dealing with state government, that's one of the roles that I play, because again, back to the 63,000 people, myself and my staff, we try and help them. It could be a PennDOT issue, birth certificate, anything state related. If it gets, gobbledygooked up down in Harrisburg, we're here to.
And maybe
help
that's
them.
a great point for the folks out there, if they want to get a hold of you or get a hold of your staff. One thing about our local, whether it's county commissioners or yourself, our local government folks are about the easiest people to run down and speak with. But why don't you go over for the folks out there how to reach out to you and how to get a hold of you?
Well, our office is located right here at 349 Pine Street, right next to the alleyway, the new alleyway that's down here. A lot of restaurants down here, so if you come and visit my office, how about taking them out to lunch, whoever you're with? Help the local businesses. But again, we're right across from Executive Plaza, catty-cornered from the courthouse. Very fortunate, too, working with the bus,
Yep.
River Valley Transit. Bus drops right off in front of our door. We have a handicap spot right in front of our door. Thank you, Bill Nichols, Jr.
Yeah.
And the Parking Authority. We also have a 15-minute stop-and-go parking spot out front, so if you're just running in to grab forms or something,
I
you
should have
can just
used that
swing
one,
in.
huh?
Yeah. So it's very, very convenient. And we have the parking deck, right across from the Trade and Transit 1. So it's just really a great location and great staff in here to help the folks out.
And as far as contacting you by phone or email?
Again, it's 349 Pine Street. If you come in the door, my business card is right on
First thing you
the
say.
counter, and I'm one of the few reps in Harrisburg, and I started this when I was county commissioner. If you get my business card, you will see that my cell number is on my business card.
And we won't give that out here today.
Well, you certainly can.
Well, go ahead.
Okay, it's 570-279-1679.
And I think that's fantastic. And
That's
that
impressive.
You do that. And
Well, I started that when I was county commissioner, and they said, you're making a big mistake, Jeff. In fact, it was Fred Marty. He was director of administration. He says you're going to get a lot of phone calls, and I said, well, my attitude is and still is that I work for the people. It's not the other way around. So they're the boss. They should have access to me, their employee. And I'll be honest with you, do I get some phone calls that are a little off the wall? Not very many.
Yeah.
Most of them are critically important. I get phone calls on Sunday. I get phone calls throughout the week. And if they call me, it's probably pretty important, and it has been pretty important, and it's worked to their benefit. And of course, my benefit is that I get to help somebody.
And again, I tip my cap to you, because that's the way government should work. That the easier you are, or folks that are elected officials to get a hold of, the better it is for everybody involved. And my number's out there. And Steph,
Mine too, yeah.
and out of all the calls, text, emails you
Not
get,
bad, is it?
No, usually most of them. And if you take even the folks that that don't agree with maybe a view or with something, usually they have something to add that you think, hey, that's a pretty good angle, that's a pretty good thought, maybe I need to revisit this or thing. It never.
Or it can stop fake news.
Yeah.
Definitely. If there's something floating around there, we know how the rumor mill works. And
Rumor mill, fake
Yeah,
news.
yeah.
Does that really go on? Speaking of that, we better take a commercial break here, and for our good friends down at Fairfield Auto Group, and we'll come back and discuss some issues. How's that? Be right back.
Over the years, this area has seen its share of ups and downs. And for the past 30 years, our employees have been dedicated to making sure your investment in your vehicle goes a long way, from sales to service. And we promise that same level of commitment for the next 30 years. It's your time, Central Pennsylvania. You deserve a fair deal. Fairfield. You're gonna love us.
And we're back downtown with State Representative Wheeland, and the big discussion in Harrisburg is state budget. So we might as well jump right into it.
Well, every year at this time, it is the same focal point. Of course, is the state budget. And the process starts with the governor's budget address, which occurred just recently, 2 weeks ago, and where the governor presents his ideas to the House. And it's a joint session with Senate and House members present. And basically it's his wish list. And it's also his way of funding his wish list.
I got to jump in, and I was just sitting here thinking how much different his wish list is than your wish list.
No.
But anyway, we'll let you. Sorry.
Well, it is. It has been a challenge with Governor Wolf. I've met with Governor Wolf on probably close to 8 or 9 different times. Truly a gentleman, very, very nice individual. But his views on the role of government versus my views differ in a lot of different categories. But back to the budget process. At this point now, we're getting ready to go into what they call budget hearings, which is the main grouping of departments, and where those departments will come in and advocate for their particular line items in the budget. And that gives us, as an elected official or representative, to talk about those line items. Of course, my focus is always on, saving money, efficiencies in the state government operations.
We always appreciate that.
Yeah, well, it's sometimes it's a challenge. Now, and as a great example, Wednesday morning, I will be in Harrisburg on the SERS, which is the state employee retirement system, which is the second largest, and then of course PSERS, which is the largest. There'll be a hearing that I'll be attending because I am now the first delegate from the House of Representatives to the SERS pension. It's an honor. It was just put on me here just recently.
Oh, very nice.
So it's and let's all be honest. There's been an awful lot of talk about pensions. I've been quoted in the local newspaper here and in Harrisburg that the pensions, when it comes to government, is eating our lunch. I mean, literally, it's the 900-pound gorilla, whatever analogy you want to use. It's just a fact. It's eating taxpayers' dollars. And my dad told me a long, long time ago, when you're in a hole and you're digging, and you suddenly realize how are you going to get out of this hole, the very first thing you do is you quit digging.
Yeah.
Then figure out
Put
how
the
you're
shovel
going to get
away.
out of this hole. And the numbers are absolutely incredible, astonishing when you figure that our unfunded liability to the state pension systems is getting real close, if it hasn't already exceeded, $70 billion. That's 2 years of what the general fund budget is.
And
2 years worth of general fund budgets.
And I brought up in an article a couple of weeks ago, a couple of people called me out. I said the deficit for the last fiscal year of what's been spent was like $700 million, plus the difference in healthcare and pension programs. That was for the fiscal year, not the total debt of the state. What is the total debt of the state right now?
I don't have those. It's in that big
They've
stack
stopped-
over there.
But this,
I wouldn't want to quote it without having it.
but let's
right in
go
front of me.
farther.
It's
This
big.
This number that we're talking about for pensions isn't included in either one of those numbers, whether it be the last fiscal year and what we operated at, or whether
No.
it be the total. And tell me if I'm wrong in my mind. When I look at the pension program, the taxpayers already paid state employees. Let's be honest, their salaries, their program, whatever the pension program they were involved in, came from the taxpayers of Pennsylvania originally, right?
Absolutely.
So we already paid in. Now, because things underperformed or didn't perform properly, they're going to go back to the taxpayers of the state of Pennsylvania again to pay those pensions that basically we've already paid for once. Am I wrong for looking at it that way?
Well, there's many ways that you can look at those benefits, and many different ways that you can look at the situation that we now find ourselves in. But let's go back in history of government employees. And because I'm a big history buff, and you always need to understand how you got to where you are,
Or
you
you're
have
doomed
to
to
look in
repeat
the
it.
past. You have to look in the past. And I'm sure your dad, my dad, used to tell me, hey Jeff, if you get a government job, the pay's not that great. Well, this is back in my youth.
Right,
The pay's not that great, but boy, you get really great benefits.
right.
Well, think about that, Jim. Back in the 60s, pensions were very inexpensive.
Sure.
You didn't have, if you
Absolutely.
were going to offer a benefits package, you could offer a very lucrative benefit package and not pay that particular employee very much in salary. But what has occurred over time is that state employees have, and municipal employees, county employees, that now all of a sudden their wages are equal to the private sector, or in some cases exceed,
Right.
and their pensions and health care and all the other benefits are much higher than the private sector. So there's a day of reckoning coming.
Sure.
There has to be, because it's absolutely impossible to continue down this road.
So what's the, not necessarily a solution, because I know that it's not that simple, but what are the steps that need to be taken to work towards a solution?
Well, step one is, like I said, we've
Stop
got
digging.
to stop digging. And what I mean by that is new hires coming into the system have to come in under a defined, or a 401k, defined contribution type plan. It's what industry moved to back in the 80s and 90s. And again, historically, why don't defined benefit plans work today is for a lot of different reasons, but primarily people are living longer.
Sure.
And to guarantee them upon retirement X amount of dollars for as long as they live. Now, when you get to my age, it's a good thing that we're living longer. But, you know, overall, mathematically, it just does not work. And then, of course, on a defined benefit plan, you are at the whim of, and you also are on a 401k type defined contribution, but you're still more so at the whim of the markets. So to answer your question, Steph, step one, quit digging. Any new hire that comes into the system has to be on what the rest of the private sector is on as a 401k. And surprisingly, when you talk to the younger educators just graduating from college, coming in, they want portability. They want the ability to have a 401k. Many state workers, you know, they'll come in, do the job, then go back to work for the private sector, and then come back and work for government, back and forth. I mean, just look at what the millennials are doing, the number of jobs that they have had or will have in their future. They need that portability. So that's where we have to start heading. Obviously, and again, so that the fake news doesn't get started, there is a contract with retirees. You cannot legally change once you have someone in the system.
Sure.
However, that being said, and again, it's state versus city, but for your viewers, have them go look Detroit pension crisis. Just Google it. It's horrible what happened to those retirees.
I know. And maybe we ought to jump in there. And it isn't about begrudging someone what they think they have coming for their retirement. I mean, God bless them in all the years of service, whether they were a state, whatever their job was. You know, don't hate the player, hate the game. It's not about the person.
You know, I'm going to use that. That is a great.
It's like Governor Wolf. He's a gentleman. I don't agree with a lot of his political views and his ideas about the budget, but I do believe he's a gentleman and has ideas and is very strong in his convictions. That has nothing to do with me disagreeing with his views. And so importantly, and I think for the folks out there, is that we would love that everybody gets what they think they have coming, no matter if they worked for, I better not say any corporations, that budgets sort of went away that they thought they were getting. That's been a popular topic. But the state employee that worked all his life and thinks he has a comfortable retirement, he should get what he has coming. I mean.
And at some point, because there is, you know, I keep saying there's no money in Harrisburg.
Yeah.
There literally is. I mean, we are at a $2 billion hole. Now that would be what the governor's proposing versus projected revenues, which that's B as in boy, that's a lot of money. So
and I'll jump in there, and where I look, when I read through his budget, I see he's increasing spending like 3.4%, and then I read something else, so say like 6 point something percent. It's hard to get the actual numbers. Is that frustrating for you, or do you have better accessibility to stuff like that than I do?
Well, and again, for your viewers, you must understand, I mean, if you were to put the complete budget with line items, it is
I know, that's
that thick. And there's a lot of moving around of numbers from one category to another. So it'll show a big decrease here.
right.
Or sometimes a smaller decrease here and then a bigger decrease on this line item. But it could be consolidation, you know, of services.
Right.
Either interdepartmental or from one department to another. So it is very difficult to track it down. So you almost have to stay up, especially at this point of the negotiation of the budget. You need to stay up at that 5,000 foot level and look at it just that department. And then again, a snapshot of the overall view and where we're headed.
And that's what you get, that's what you get the big bucks to do, right?
Well, it's not only myself, but
No, I know that.
There's,
But I go back to increase in spending, and it comes to the line you use that you gotta stop digging. You can't keep increasing. I don't care if it's 1%. We just can't keep increased spending when we can't balance what we did last year, the year before. It just doesn't.
how would it work in your business?
It doesn't. It doesn't work in any.
You know, and but again, back to the pensions.
The only good thing is in government is you can come out.
And tap another source of revenue, which maybe we'll get into with what they did with the vape shop.
And you know what? We could talk budget all day, but we'll come back with the last thought on that. We'll take a commercial break and we'll be right back.
Over the years, this area has seen its share of ups and downs. And for the past 30 years, our employees have been dedicated to making sure your investment in your vehicle goes a long way, from sales to service. And we promise that same level of commitment for the next 30 years. It's your time, Central Pennsylvania. You deserve a fair deal. Fairfield. You're gonna love us.
And we're back, and we could talk budget all day.
Oh,
Well, you do. But
I do.
How about a last quick thought on the budget and where you see it ending?
Well, I guess the best way to start is you got to know who the players are when it comes to putting a final budget for the Commonwealth general fund budget to bed, so to speak, and get it signed into law. And that is that you have 5 players. There's 5 players or 5 teams, so to speak. Maybe that's a better analogy. You always love using sports.
I do.
You know, you have the Republican caucus in the House, you have the Democrat caucus in the House. So there's 2 players. Then you move over to the Senate, you have the same thing. You have the Senate Democrats, the Senate Republicans as a caucus, and then of course you have the governor's office. So, and we're all pulling on a rope in different directions sometimes. Not always, it depends upon the issue. But the actual number of people that put together the budget and have the ability to vote on it or sign it into law, the magic number is there's 254 people involved in this. So you have 254 ideas on all those line items. So
Wow.
amazingly, though, it does work.
Yeah.
I was just thinking it's amazing you get anything accomplished.
Well, again, that's our primary role, you know, is in the House is the budget. And we will, you know, the governor has presented his. Now we will, through these hearings, produce our budget and then let the negotiating begin with the other, in my case, Republican caucus versus the other 4 teams.
And just to kick it out there, and I'm sure everybody that's watching knows this, the Republicans are in control by how many?
Oh my goodness, it's we don't have a supermajority now. A supermajority is when we can override
Right.
the governor's veto, but the Senate does. I believe they're 34 to 16, and of course we're at a record high in recent history. Some say as far back as the 1950s. But depending upon how you look at it, it could also be all the way back to the Civil War that the Republicans have that much of a majority. But all that being said, Pennsylvania is a very diverse. Some say you could make 4 states out of Pennsylvania because of our total different economies, different socioeconomic makeups. Rural versus
Sure.
And a fine line in between them.
And at the end of the day, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but at what is it? Well, you can tell me. There's a certain number of days if the budget doesn't pass, it actually is enacted as the governor, proposed it, correct?
Now you're
Put you on
getting
the
into
spot.
legal.
Yeah.
The legal. I mean, the governor cannot.
It doesn't, it isn't,
If he refuses to sign the budget, it takes whatever passes the House is
What takes the place?
Takes the place, yeah.
Okay. What if it doesn't pass the House? Isn't that what happened his first year?
No, we had put, the first year, we had put a budget on his desk and he vetoed it.
Oh, he vetoed it. I'm sorry, I have it in reverse.
So he has the ability to
Veto.
to veto what we pass as legislation called the budget.
So, just from my knowledge, what happens if the budget doesn't get passed? What if the governor doesn't like it? What if you don't like what the governor, does it go back to the budget from the previous year that you have?
No, he'll work with the treasurer, meaning the executive branch will work with the treasurer, and find money. But then again, certain, and I always love this statement, non-essential employees will be laid off.
That's what happened. There wasn't that.
So
Was
if
that
you're
nice?
do you have any non-essential employees?
I wish I did. Every business runs so tight to the vest anymore that people, I'm sure out in TV land, people are saying, come on, you know there's non-essential employees in Harrisburg, but I don't want to go there either.
Some will
But,
say that. But
is that what happened last year where there were folks laid off?
last year
and
he
schools,
just left it
schools
become
didn't.
law.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking about. Schools, there was funding that wasn't sent out, and there was
2 years ago.
That was 2 years ago, and it goes a certain period of time without his signature, and it becomes law
If he doesn't veto it.
if he doesn't veto it.
So
I need a program.
yeah.
Hey, let's get off the budget here. How about that?
Well, in all fairness to the budget, the better time, and hopefully, you all come back into my office again after the budget's approved, because I think it would be nice to chat about the budget.
Oh, I
There'd be
think-
more to talk about.
I think that would be a great idea, and then maybe get into some specifics from your side. I mean, we put you on the spot. How did you feel about this? Because I understand for you folks out there, there's a lot of questions I'd like to ask Representative Wheelan, and I just don't feel comfortable today doing that because the budget hasn't been passed, and it'd be putting you in a bad position.
Well, or it'd
And
be just speculation.
Maybe speculation, but
And
after.
let's get into some of the speculations if we want.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that we talked about before we came on air, and one of the things that Jimmy and I have heard repeatedly in talking to some of our local county government is finding new revenue. And one of the ways that Pennsylvania government is attempting to find new revenue is with a 40% floor tax on the vape shops. Now, let me preface this by saying I'm a little biased in this situation. I was able to quit smoking after almost 20 years using vaping to do it.
Congratulations.
I did through all the little steps of, the nicotine and lowering the nicotine until I was no nicotine. And as of last week, I have completely stopped smoking anything
By utilizing
by
vape.
utilizing the vape shops.
And incidentally, I'm gonna jump in just for a moment. And I've heard from so many people back when that tax was proposed. I actually wrote an article, and I had an outpouring of folks in the same. A lot of them smoked a lot longer and have been able to quit because of vaping. That's all I wanted to.
Yeah. So I know that you have been fighting against this tax because I can't imagine any small business being able to survive a straight across the board 40% floor tax. And I have also never seen a big box vape store. So what are your thoughts on this tax and how it's affecting?
Well, obviously, I was opposed to it. I introduced legislation last year trying to protect these small businesses, but they literally got caught up in the budget. And as we had talked earlier, this whole 40%, if I can correct you just a little bit, the floor tax was one thing, which is not unusual, a floor tax, when a tax is increased. And anybody out there that wants to know all the specifics of a floor tax, another time. But basically it was a 40% tax going forward from July 1 of last year on all products at the wholesale level, where the bottom line is, in June of last year, a product that sold for $1 is now $1.40, or $10 is now $14, $100 item. I mean, some of the vape products are very sophisticated and sometimes very expensive. But what it did was it put all those shop owners at a competitive disadvantage to contiguous states. Up here in this part of the state, it would be New York.
Yep.
A lot of my constituents are pooling orders and they're running up to New York to buy those products. And, you know, as a result, not only did the state not get that 40% that they were anticipating, they're not getting the PIT, which is personal income tax, from those employees that used to work at those vape shops, and they're not getting the 6% sales tax that they once got when those sales occurred here in Pennsylvania. And then some other folks, they're buying on the internet. And as we all know, some internet suppliers, they do not honor the Pennsylvania sales tax. So once again, these products are entering Pennsylvania, where we once were at least able to get the 6% sales tax on it. Now we're not even getting that. So
And that's a big problem. I mean, it doesn't matter if I'm talking to Commissioner Messer or to you, whoever in government, the online sales of products and the lack of taxation coming back into the community where they're purchased. And obviously, it's a selling point for whether it be the e-cigarette industry. It's a selling point. If you don't have to pay tax, if there's less cost.
But back to Steph's situation with the vape shops, I mean, and I visited many vape shops before I introduced this legislation, because I don't vape, but I certainly wanted to find out, you know, what they're faced with. And these are really great business people, great entrepreneurs, and they have a passion for helping people. I haven't met one vape shop store owner that wasn't excited about the product that he sold that actually helped people. And we, in government, chased them out of business.
Because if you go into the local shops, it's like its own little community. It's a hobby a lot. So yeah, you go in and it's one of those situations. It's, you know, a very like Cheers-like moment. You go in and they know who you are.
It's a support group.
Yeah, and yes, it's very disappointing to see things like that happen, not only in a monetary standpoint as far as the state is concerned, but from a health standpoint for the people who are quitting, or even for the social aspect and the impact that has on your community. It's all around disappointing.
And unfortunately, and I won't go long on this, but the governor sees business as a Dollar Tree, whether it be the Marcellus shale industry, whether it be vape shops, whatever is successful, he wants to tax and make a source of more revenue. And unfortunately, like you said, folks going to New York State or the Marcellus shale industry bailing out, no matter what it is, that philosophy just does not work.
No, it doesn't, Jim.
Anyway, what's up next, Steph? What do you got on you?
Well, I know the other thing that has been in the news a lot recently, and I'm curious about, is the Real ID laws. Because this is something that has the potential to impact a lot of Pennsylvanians and their ability to travel and enter government buildings. So why don't you explain a little bit about what the Real ID law is and how it's affecting the people of the state?
Okay. Well, I think we should go back in history once again. Where did Real ID come from? And it was after the attacks of 9/11, when President Bush at that time put together a commission to study what we needed to do in the United States to make us more secure. And of course, there were a whole bunch of regulations. And one of the things was state, meaning all states, their driver's license. We had to tighten things up. We had to use better technology so that they could not be duplicated, forged, like you did when you were 18 and got your driver's license from
No
the
comment.
back of a magazine that showed
comment
that you
on
were
that.
21. I never did that. But so so then you move forward. It was, and I fail to remember the year, but I believe it was in 2012. The state passed legislation, and it was passed by the House, the Senate, signed into law, that we were not going to comply with the recommendations of Real ID. All sorts of constitutional questions, but primarily was the expense. At that time, PennDOT projected that it was going to run the state about $145 million to come into compliance. So let's assume, I mean, obviously even back then, the state did not have that much money in their piggy bank, you know, to spend it on complying with the Real ID issue. So let's move forward. The federal government has, again, an unfunded mandate, said, yes, you are, or you're not going to be able to get on an airplane. So that's where we're at. Now, just recently, December timeframe, we wrote, I'm sorry, it would have been in January because it was right after the inauguration. There was a group of us legislators that sent a letter to President Trump asking him to look into this. I signed on to that letter. The main reason I signed on to that letter is I think there's a need for review of those recommendations, because when you think about it, those recommendations are now over 15 years old.
Yeah.
So are we still going to head down that path, spend all this money, only to find out that we get another oops from the federal government that says, oh, this isn't working either, let's do this. So I think after 15 years, it's time to restudy the issue to see what
Agreed.
works and what doesn't. And, you know, if the state, and I'm sure they would, legislatively, we would have to pass those costs on to individuals that secure a driver's license every 4 years. And those costs could be as high as $120, $130. If I had a calculator here, I'd do the quick math for you. But assuming that that $145 million is still a good number, with the number of licenses that are issued, and to recover that cost, and then the ongoing cost to provide secure delivery of Real ID compliant driver's license, you're still at well over $100 to renew your driver's license. And one of the little caveats in there too is, if you were able to, or if you had a change of address, where now you can do it online relatively quickly, you have no interaction one-on-one with people. Now, if you change your address or change your name, in the case of a marriage, you have to show up in person in front of another human being with all sorts of forms of identification.
And we already know that the DMV has a stellar reputation for doing things quickly and efficiently. I will say this, I at least, I mean, it's there's a way around it. You can go get a passport, and because for some of people, you don't necessarily need, you're not traveling. It's, you know, there's a lot of people, I'm sure, that aren't getting on a plane, and they're not flying, and they're not going into government buildings. So in reality, this really has very little bearing on them.
And the best way to look at it is what's a driver's license cost you per year? What does a passport cost you per year?
Right.
You need a passport, and did you see it, Jim, just recently? Cruise ships, the only thing that they honor now is passports.
I did see that.
So what's going to happen if we spend all this money and you can't get on a boat, a plane, a train, go through a tunnel, without a passport?
The most obvious thing, and I agree with what you said, is after 15 years, it needs to be revisited, because there has to be a better way now.
And hopefully they'll find a more secure way.
Hey, we got to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with some final thoughts from Representative Wheelan.
Over the years, this area has seen its share of ups and downs. And for the past 30 years, our employees have been dedicated to making sure your investment in your vehicle goes a long way, from sales to service. And we promise that same level of commitment for the next 30 years. It's your time, Central Pennsylvania. You deserve a fair deal. Fairfield. you're gonna love us.
And we're back for some closing thoughts with Representative Wheelan. We could talk all day.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing how time slips away, and I didn't mean to take up so much of your time, but what are some, give us a couple parting shots here, so to speak, on how you feel about your job. I know how you feel about it, and where we're going to move forward from here.
Well, obviously, I really do love my job. I love the constituent services, the folks that, you're able to help with. Sometimes they're state-related issues, sometimes they have nothing to do with state government, but I truly believe our founding fathers, when they formed our representative type of government, they really wanted to pluck somebody from society that knew how to connect the dots. So that, like my services are, I don't know how to help them with their problem, but I know somebody that can help them with their situation. And that to me is really the neat part of my job.
Don't be the expert, but know who the expert is, right?
And don't you believe our founding fathers intended that? And
I honestly
that's why
do.
they needed, businessmen and doctors and lawyers and all the professions to go to Harrisburg, to go to Washington, D.C. to represent us. And to my knowledge, no other country has been able to come up with a better system. And we survive in spite of ourselves.
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes. Yeah.
Steph, anything you want to ask?
No, just that thank you for the time, taking the time to talk to us. We always appreciate it. And I think it makes it nice for the people who are watching to kind of be reminded that sometimes you don't always feel it, but that your representatives do care about you and your issues and what you have going on and how they can help. So thank you for that.
And thank you, because I think
Thanks
this
for
is
having
one
us.
of the best ways to communicate with their elected official, and me obviously to communicate with them, and love to have you back.
We'll definitely come back after the budget's passed.
After the budget.
Then I can ask you some of those questions.
Absolutely.
So-
Would love to be here and host you all.
Well, thank you. And Juliana, the busiest kid in Lycoming County, her segment would be next, but Juliana's got the week off. She's got some things going on, and obviously the show with Representative Wheelan ran a little long, and we'll give you a little a tour out of his office and show you the outside on the way out. And thanks for joining us as always, and God bless America.